My name is Eleanor Voss. I am 38 years old. And the thing I need to tell you first is this. I still have the voicemail. It lives in a folder on my phone that I have not deleted in 2 years. 14 seconds long. His voice on it. Calm, unhurried, completely certain. Saying 4 words that I have turned over in my hands every single day since the morning I first heard them. 4 words that told me everything I had suspected for 11 months and refused to believe. I'm going to tell you what those 4 words were. But not yet. First, I need to take you back to a Sunday afternoon in March, 3 years before any of this happened, when I was sitting at a corner table in a small Italian restaurant in Leeds, with a man I had known for exactly 6 weeks. And he reached across the table and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear without asking, without hesitation, like he had been doing it for years. And I thought, with a clarity I had never felt before about another person, oh, there you are. His name was Marcus Webb, 41 years old, a structural engineer who read actual books, who could name every tree in a park by its bark, who made coffee at 6 a.m. and left a cup on my side of the bed without waking me. He had a laugh that started slow and built, the kind that made everyone in a room turn around to find the source of it. He had a scar above his left eyebrow from a cycling accident at 19 that he described with such theatrical self-deprecation, it became one of my favorite stories about him. I fell for him completely. Not gradually. Completely. At the way you fall when you are not expecting the ground to disappear. We moved in together after 14 months. A house in Headingley, red brick, bay windows, a garden that was slightly too large for 2 people who worked full-time, but that we talked about endlessly. What we would plant, how we would fix the broken gate, whether the apple tree at the far end was salvageable or just decorative. We never fixed the gate. We planted 3 things and lost 2 of them. The apple tree turned out to be fine. It just needed time. I was 35 years old, and I had never in my life felt so located, so precisely, specifically in the right place. And then, 11 months after we moved in, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, the way these things always go. Slowly, then all at once. The first thing I noticed was the phone. Marcus had always been easy with his phone. Left it on the counter, left it on the table, never flinched when I picked it up to check the time or show him something. And then one evening in October, I remember it was October because we'd just carved a pumpkin, and it was sitting on the kitchen windowsill still. His phone buzzed on the counter, and he crossed the kitchen in 4 steps to pick it up. Fast. The particular speed of someone who does not want you to see the screen. He glanced at it, put it in his pocket, said nothing. I said nothing. I told myself it was work. He was in the middle of a complicated project. There had been issues with a contractor. There were always messages at odd hours when a deadline was close. I believed that for about 3 weeks. The second thing was the Tuesday evenings, and he had always gone to the gym on Tuesdays. 6:30, home by 8, shower, dinner, exactly that order for the entire time I had known him. And then in November, the Tuesdays started running long. Home by 9, then 9:30. Always a reason. Traffic. Ran into someone. Extra set. Lost track of time. Each reason completely plausible. Each reason delivered with that particular quality of detail that is just slightly more than a person who has nothing to hide would bother to provide. I noticed. I filed it. I told myself I was paranoid. The third thing was smaller and worse than either of the others. We were in bed on a Saturday morning, early, the particular pale light that comes through curtains before 8 a.m., and he was asleep beside me, and his phone on the nightstand buzzed twice in quick succession. I looked at the screen automatically, the way you do when something makes a noise near you. The preview showed a name, not a contact name, a first name only, a name I didn't recognize. Simone. I looked at it for 1 second, then I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling. I did not pick up his phone. I want to be clear about that. I did not look through it. I did not check his messages or his location or his call history. I got up, went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table in the early Saturday quiet and thought about how long I had been collecting these small moments and what I was going to do with the collection. I decided, sitting there with my coffee, that I would ask him directly. That evening, that I would say, "Is there something you need to tell me?" And that I deserved a direct answer, and that I was going to ask for one. I did not ask him that evening. He came downstairs at 9 and made pancakes and put a playlist on that he knew I loved, and was so entirely, warmly himself that I told myself I had been constructing a case out of nothing, out of a fast phone grab, and late Tuesdays, and a name that could have been anyone. I ate the pancakes. I said nothing. That was October through to February. 5 months of collecting and dismissing and collecting again. And then came the voicemail. I need to slow everything down here and tell you this carefully, because every second of it matters. It was a Wednesday morning, 7:43 a.m. I was getting ready for work. Marcus had already left. Early meeting, he'd said, kissed me on the top of my head at 6:50 and was gone. And I was in the bathroom when my phone buzzed on the bed. I assumed it was my colleague Diane who texted at strange hours. I came out of the bathroom in a towel, picked up the phone, looked at the screen. A voicemail. From Marcus. Which was odd. He never left voicemails. Nobody leaves voicemails. The little notification sat there, and I stood in the bedroom in my towel, and I pressed play. There was background noise first. Traffic, I think. Or wind. And then his voice, clear and close to the phone, saying, "I know. I'll sort it tonight. She won't find out." And then the call ended. 14 seconds. I stood very still. He had called me by accident. He had meant to call someone else. Simone, I assumed, or whoever he was speaking to about whatever he was sorting. And he had pressed my name by mistake and left 14 seconds of voicemail that told me, with complete and absolute clarity, everything I had been filing away for 5 months. She won't find out. She was me. I listened to it twice. Then I put my phone in my bag, finished getting dressed, drove to work, sat at my desk, and worked a full 8-hour day without saying a word to anyone. I want you to understand what that cost. Sitting in an open plan office for 8 hours, with that voicemail in your phone, and your face completely arranged, and your work on your screen, and your voice saying normal things to normal people, while inside you the entire architecture of 2 years and 8 months is coming down floor by floor. I did not cry at my desk. I did not call him, and I did not text. I just worked, and I waited. And at 5:30, I drove home, and I sat in the car in the driveway for 11 minutes before I went inside. He was already home. I could see the kitchen light on through the front window. He was making dinner. I could smell it from the hall. He called out, "Perfect timing, 20 minutes. I hung up my coat. I walked into the kitchen. I put my bag on the table. I looked at him standing at the hob, completely at ease, and I said, "I need you to listen to something." I played him the voicemail on speaker. 14 seconds. The wooden spoon in his hand went completely still. Before I tell you what happened next, if you want to hear the rest of this, like and subscribe. It only takes a second, and it means everything to me. I drop a comment with your location and your local time. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to that kitchen, that wooden spoon, that man standing at the hob hearing his own voice tell on himself. He didn't speak for a long time. The hob was still on. Something was simmering behind him. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary, the specific smell of his Sunday roast that I had told him 30 times was one of my favorite things in the world. And I was standing in the middle of it with my phone in my hand, and I watched his face go through 6 things in about 4 seconds. Surprise, calculation, something that looked almost like relief. And then he put the spoon down and turned off the hob and turned around. He said, "How long have you had that?" Not, "What is that?" Not, "I can explain." He said, "How long have you had that?" in which told me that he was already past denial and into management, which told me this was not new, which told me the 5 months of filing had not been paranoia. I said, "Since this morning." He said, "Eleanor." I said, "Don't." Just that one word, don't. He sat down at the kitchen table. He put his face in his hands, and I stood across the kitchen from him and I waited. What came out over the next 2 hours was not all at once, and not in a straight line, and not without him stopping several times to say things that were not quite lies, but were not quite the truth either. The kind of half-answers that people give when they are editing in real time. But the shape of it eventually became clear. Simone, a woman he had met through work 8 months ago, not a one-time thing. 8 months, and which meant that for 8 of the 11 months we had lived in that house together, this had been happening, which meant the apple tree conversations, and the garden plans, and the coffee on my side of the bed, and the Saturday pancakes, and the playlist he knew I loved. All of it had been happening at the same time as Simone. I asked him one question that I need to tell you about, because his answer is the thing that I have never fully recovered from, and never fully forgotten. I said, "Did you love her?" He looked at the table for a long time, and then he said, "I don't know. I don't know. Not no. Not of course not. Not like I love you. I don't know." I picked up my car keys from the table. I called my friend B, so I drove to B's flat in Roundhay, and I sat on her sofa, and she put a blanket over me without saying anything, and I stared at her television without seeing it until about 2 a.m, and then I slept. I did not go back to the house for 4 days. The 4 days at Bia's had a strange, suspended quality, like being in between 2 things, and belonging to neither. B was exactly what I needed. Present without being overwhelming. Practical without being clinical. She fed me things. She did not say "I told you so," which she could have, because she had met Marcus exactly twice, and both times come home, and said to her partner that there was something slightly performed about him, and I had dismissed this completely because I was in love, and love makes you a very poor judge of performance. I called in sick to work on Thursday and Friday, its first time in 4 years. My manager Diane texted to check on me, and I said a family thing, and she said take all the time you need, and I was grateful for the specific kindness of people who ask only what they need to ask. I thought about the house constantly, the bay windows, the broken gate we never fixed, the apple tree. I thought about my things in the drawers and on the shelves, distributed through those rooms over 14 months of living there, and the particular intimacy of having your possessions mixed in with another person's, the way it looks like a life, the way it actually is a life, and what it means to unmix it. I thought about the voicemail. I listened to it again once, on the second night, sitting on B's bathroom floor at midnight. I don't know why I went to the bathroom. Privacy, maybe. In the specific privacy of falling apart somewhere small and enclosed. 14 seconds. She won't find out. Past tense, in a way. She found out. On the fourth day, I went back to the house to get some things. Marcus was there. We did not fight. I want to be specific about that, because people always expect the fight, and there wasn't one. There was something quieter and more final than a fight. There was a conversation in the kitchen, standing up, both of us with our arms slightly crossed without meaning to, and at the end of it I had 2 bin bags and a promise to collect the rest of my things the following weekend. I drove away, and I did not look in the rearview mirror. Here is what rock bottom looked like for me. It was 3 weeks after I left. I was in a temporary flat in Meanwood, furnished, neutral. It's the kind of place that belongs to no one, and shows it. And it was 2:47 in the morning, and I was awake, not thinking. That's the thing I keep trying to explain to people. Not replaying, not strategizing, not crying. Just awake. In the particular stillness of a place that doesn't know you yet. In a bed that is the right size but wrong in every other way. With the sound of a street outside that is not your street. I had been awake since 1. I picked up my phone. I almost called Marcus. I want to be honest about that. I had the phone in my hand, and his name on the screen, and my thumb over the call button, and I sat there for, I don't know, 2 minutes, at 3, in that specific suspended state where the bad decision is completely available, and the only thing standing between you and it is the thinnest possible membrane of self-knowledge. I put the phone down. I thought about the Italian restaurant in Leeds, the corner table, his hand reaching across to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, the clarity of, oh, there you are. I thought about how certain I had been in that moment, and how certainty is not the same as truth. The flat was completely silent. The street outside had gone quiet. The digital clock on the microwave in the kitchen said 2:47 in green numbers, and I could see it from the bed, and I watched it change to 2:48, and then 2:49, and then I stopped watching. I lay on my back in the dark in a flat that didn't know me, and I held very still, and I waited for morning. And if you have ever trusted someone so completely that their betrayal felt less like a surprise and more like a ground disappearing, if you have ever lain awake in a place that didn't feel like yours yet and wondered how you got there, tell me in the comments. How did you handle it? What did you do on the nights when the silence was too loud? I want to know. And if you are still here with me, hit that like button, because the next part is where everything begins to shift. The war inside me in those weeks was not between loving him and hating him. It was stranger than that, and harder. It was between the Marcus I had known, the one who left coffee on my side of the bed and knew every tree by its bark and made pancakes on Saturday mornings, and the information I now had, which was that both versions were real, almost they were not separate people. The man who had tucked my hair behind his ear was the same man who had said she won't find out. Both true. Both him. That is the specific torture of this kind of betrayal. Not that the person was secretly monstrous all along, but that the person was genuinely good in the ways you loved them and still did this. That love and deception existed in the same body, in the same hands, on the same Tuesday evenings. I almost texted him 4 times in the first month. Each time I got as far as opening the message thread and seeing our last exchange. Something mundane. Something about whether we needed bin bags, which was almost funny in a way I couldn't quite laugh at. And each time I closed it again. What stopped me was not pride. I want to be clear about that. It was not some strong, resolute sense of self-worth, and it was simpler and more embarrassing. I was afraid of what he would say. Specifically, I was afraid he would say something kind, and I would believe it, and undo the 4 days at B's, and the temporary flat and all of it. The way I had believed the pancakes and the playlist, and the coffee on my side of the bed. I put my phone in a kitchen drawer one evening and went for a walk. Just around the block, 20 minutes, the specific early evening light of a city in late autumn, orange and long. I came back. I made dinner. I ate it at the small table by the window of the flat that didn't know me yet. That was the first evening that felt, even slightly like mine. The shift came from an unexpected place. Most shifts do. It was 5 weeks after I left. I was back at work, fully back, at the particular relief of having somewhere to be and something to do that exists outside your own head. I was in a meeting about a campaign that had nothing to do with my life, and my colleague James, who knew nothing about any of this, who had never met Marcus, who was simply a person I worked alongside, said something offhand about the campaign that made me laugh. Not a polite laugh, a real one, sudden and unplanned, the kind that catches you off guard. I sat with that for the rest of the meeting, the way the laugh had come from nowhere, the way my body had produced it without consulting anything, without checking whether it was appropriate, without running it past the grief, without permission. I thought, oh, there I am. The same words, different meaning. 8 months after I left the house in Headingley, and I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember that specifically, because Tuesdays had become loaded for me, and I always noticed them. 2:51 p.m. I almost didn't answer. It was a woman named Diane. Not my colleague Diane. A different one. She introduced herself carefully, said she had got my number from a mutual contact, said she was sorry to call out of nowhere, said she needed to talk to me about Marcus Webb. I sat very still at my desk. She said, I was seeing him until about 3 months ago. I said nothing for a moment. She said, I know this is strange. I found out some things recently, and I thought you deserved to know, because I wish someone had told me. What Diane told me over the next 30 minutes, I will not relay in full, because some of it is hers. But the shape of it was this. Marcus had not ended things with Simone when he told me he had. He had continued seeing her for 4 months after I left. He had also been seeing Diane, who had met him at a conference in November, 2 months after I moved out. He had told Diane he was single. He had told Simone, apparently, something else entirely. There was a pattern, clear and long and nothing to do with me specifically. I was not the cause or the exception. I was simply the person who happened to be in the house when the voicemail happened. She won't find out. He had said that about all of us, probably, in various forms, to various people, on various Tuesday evenings. I thanked Diane for calling. I asked if she was okay. She said she was getting there. We talked for a few more minutes. Two women on opposite sides of the same discovery. And there was something in it. Something in the plainness of being seen by someone who understood exactly. That felt like a door closing very quietly on something I had been holding open. After we hung up, I sat at my desk. Then I opened my work and kept going. I did not cry. I felt instead something that I can only describe as the last piece of a shape clicking into place. Not painful, just complete. I texted B. Call me tonight. Final chapter. She called at 7:30. I told her everything. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You know what this means?" I said, "What?" She said, "It was never about you. It was never about you." 10 months after I left, I ran into Marcus at a farmer's market on a Saturday morning. Not planned, in the specific smallness of cities. He was at a bread stall. I came around the corner of a vegetable stand, and we were suddenly 6 feet apart, with a crowd moving between us, and nothing to do but acknowledge each other. He looked, I want to find the right word, reduced. Not physically, exactly the same physically, but something in the way he was standing had lost that quality of ease, that comfortable taking up of space that I had found so attractive in a restaurant in Leeds 3 years ago. He looked like someone managing something. He said my name. I said, "Hi, Marcus." He said, "You look well." I said, "I am well." He looked at my basket. Sourdough, early strawberries, a bunch of dahlias I had bought for no reason, except that they were the color of the Bristol sky. Except I was in Leeds. I'd accept. He said something about hoping things were good. He said something about the area being nice this time of year. He was filling space with words, because words were all he had, and none of them were adequate. I looked at this man who had left coffee on my side of the bed, this man who had known every tree by its bark, this man who had said, into a phone he meant to be calling someone else, 14 words that dismantled 2 years and 8 months in a single morning. I said, "Things are really good, actually. Take care of yourself." And I walked to the next stall. I bought the sourdough. I drove home. I put the dahlias in a glass on the kitchen table of my own flat. My flat now, properly mine. The lease signed. The walls slowly becoming mine. And I stood back and looked at them. There I am, if you liked how this ended, not with a confrontation, not with a breakdown, but with a woman who finally heard her own laugh again and knew what it meant. Then subscribe and check the description. I have more stories just like this one waiting for you. Now let me tell you the last thing. Here is what I know now that I didn't know in that kitchen with the voicemail playing on speaker. Betrayal of this kind, the slow, constructed, parallel kind, does something specific to your sense of reality. It makes you distrust your own perception, because you were there for all of it. You saw the coffee on the nightstand, and the pancakes and the playlist. You felt the warmth of it. You were not wrong about the warmth. The warmth was real. And it existed at the same time as Simone, and Diane, and the Tuesday evenings, and the she won't find out, and both things were true. That is the part that takes the longest to reconcile. What I want to say to you, what I sit at my kitchen table and think about when I am being honest, is this. The betrayal was not evidence that the love was false. It was evidence that the person was not who I needed them to be, Those are different things, and knowing the difference matters. I think about the Italian restaurant sometimes. The corner table, the hand reaching across. Oh, there you are. That moment was real. It happened. He cannot reach backward and unmake it. What I felt in that moment, that clarity, that specific recognition, was mine. It still is. The dahlias are on my kitchen table as I tell you this. A different bunch from the farmer's market ones. Those lasted 9 days, which is good for dahlias, and the table is the right height, and the chair is the one I chose, and the flat smells like coffee I made for myself this morning. It is mine. Just mine. And that, I think, is the whole lesson. Not the voicemail, though the voicemail was a kind of mercy in its way. Not the phone call from Diane, though that gave me something I needed. Not even the farmer's market, though that was its own quiet completion. The lesson is the dahlia on the table. The lesson is, learn to recognize the rooms that are yours. Learn to sit in them without apologizing for taking up space. Learn to make your own coffee and leave it on your own side of the bed. You were not wrong to love him. You were not stupid to believe the pancakes. You were just in the wrong room, and now you're not. The voicemail was 14 seconds long. Leaving was the rest of my life.